Right home.
Oh, nice.
Smuggler's Cove. Welcome aboard. Nice to have you. I want to thank everybody for joining us and helping close the last page to Anne's chapter on her life. We're in Smuggler's Cove, which is a cove right outside my house, and behind me you can see my house. And on board is Owen Kavanaugh and Jessica Lancaster, who's Anne's niece, and our dear neighbor Jane Kroger, and our dear friend and the person who made our outside of our house beautiful, Sheila Hagen, Randy Carroll, whose generosity and nautical skills have brought us here on his boat. He lives directly across the strait and is also a personal good friend of mine, as well as a personal good friend of Anne's. So thank you. Welcome aboard Randy's craft. Basically what I wanted to do is share a little bit about how I met Anne and our life together. Basically, I met Anne in the fall of 1963. I was a transfer student from San Francisco State to USC, and my first class was Dr. Wepter's English class. And I sat next to this cute blonde in the second row by the name of Anne. And she got an A in the class. I got a B in the class, something that has haunted me ever since. But I actually asked her out on a date 3 times before she said yes. And I could not quite understand the first 2 times she rejected my invitation. Once she said it was her parents' anniversary, and another time it was one of her parents' or brother's birthday. And I could not understand why you would want to spend time on those holidays with your family instead of going out with me. But the 3rd time she did say yes. And I took her to see Cleopatra with Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor at the Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. Wow. And for those that haven't lived in California and LA, Grauman's is a historic, iconic theater where they have the footprints and the handprints in cement and the signatures in front of the theater. And it's a local landmark. And after that, we went out a few times. I was falling in love with her, and then she broke up with me. And I was sort of shattered for a while. And then out of the blue, she called me after she had a couple of days with Michael Sedgwick. The sight of between Michael Sedgwick and Michael Botwin, I'll give Michael Botwin another try. And it was our first date. On our second time around, I took her to see Fantastics in a little theater. And I think Bill Bixby was the lead. And I think Ray Walston was his name. He used to play the devil in Damn Yankees. And it was a story somewhat of us in that there was a fence between 2 neighbors that had 2 kids, a young boy and a young girl, and they wanted them to fall in love, so they built a fence. And then they finally built, and the first act was in the moonlight, and they had a cardboard moon. Of course, in the moonlight, you don't see much. Everything is dim. And the kids fell in love, and then the 2 dads had to tear down the wall. Second act was in the sunlight, and then you could see all the blemishes. And the couple had difficulty. They went their ways in life, and they got back together, and the play had an happy ending, and so did our marriage. Our marriage was somewhat rocky to the extent that her parents, who were always cordial and friendly to me, didn't want me to marry their daughter. And when we got engaged, her mom didn't even want to look at her engagement ring, which was a really hurtful episode for Anne and for myself and my family. My family loved Anne. I mean, If anybody was going to get rid of another child, they would dump me and keep Ann if they had a choice. But we got married. Her parents said if we wait a year, they'll give us a wedding. And they did. It was really lovely. And Ann's mom actually made her wedding dress. Her mom was a great seamstress and actually sewed Ann's dresses at a time when women wore dresses that time. And they were always really cute and always in style. And she made her wedding dress. We got married at the Church of the Good Shepherd, is a Methodist church in Arcadia area, and it was presided over by Dr. Robb, who was a college professor at USC and taught human values. He was also a Methodist minister, and his class had fundamentally changed Ann's outlook. She was from a very conservative background, and he made her look at values in a different perspective and changed her. Dr. Robb's daughter was Ann's sorority sister, and they were also good friends. And her grandfather, Ann's family, went generationally for probably 2 centuries of missionaries, except for her dad was the black sheep of the family. And his sister, Ann's aunt, would turn him into the dean of high school when he would smoke or go out to see a movie. I mean, there was a certain amount of adventure in Ann's dad. He was a fun person to be around. So we got married at the Church of the Good Shepherd. It was a non-sectarian wedding, and in addition to Dr. Raw presenting the service, her grandfather, being a pastor, said some nice words, and then we retreated over to Ann's house for the reception, which was very nice and very much to our liking, in that it was very informal. And Ann's dad was a bass player, and his band played, and it was just really nice. And then we snuck out, and Ann's sorority sister and best friend, Susan Gutchow, actually planned her wedding, and planned our first night would be at Morro Bay, which we did not know at the time. We would not arrive until 2 a.m. in the morning. After we had our first meal at Anderson's split pea soup near Buellton, which is another iconic place. I don't know if it's still around. And after our honeymoon, we went back to regular life. We had an apartment on New Hampshire Boulevard and 3rd Street, which was right in suburbia Los Angeles. And we thought it was a little place in heaven. And it was a big apartment complex, multi-stories. You had neighbors on both sides of you. You had neighbors on top of you. You had a hallway out in front. You had one window in the living room and one window in the bedroom that looked onto a cinder block wall. And after about 6 months, that place started really closing in on us. And then we moved to a place on Maltman in Silver Lake area, which was a wonderful apartment building on top of a hill where we had a view, a modified view of the city, just a few blocks up from the Hollywood freeway. And we lived there and really liked it. We had windows on 3 sides and only a neighbor on top of us and a stairway on one side of us. And we really liked that. And one day, as I was a law student and Ann was going and working for her bachelor's degree, and we saw a dog, a little puppy, chained to the next door neighbor's door. And that evening, it came back, it was still there. And Ann went inside and told those neighbors, gave her a piece of her mind, and they told her that it wasn't their dog. So she took it in, and then we had to move because we couldn't keep a place. We couldn't have a dog in that place, but Ann was not going to get rid of that little dog. And we looked all over and could not find a place. And the last resort, we were in South Pasadena, and we stopped at a realtor who said, I got just a place for you. It's a huge old house. It has a maid's quarters and a dog's room. And we thought, yeah, well, maze quarters, well, that'll probably work with the dog run, yeah. So we went to this beautiful house that the owner of a moving van company, I can't remember the name, Lions Moving Van, I think, bought it and built it for his daughter as a wedding gift. It turns out that the landlady and her 2 young daughters lived in the maze quarters, and the house was ours. And it was a beautiful 2-story house with a fireplace you can almost walk in. A beautiful place. And we lived there for a number of years. And then we moved around and finally ended up in San Pedro at a house that I loved. It was 3 blocks from the ocean on top of a hill, with a 180-degree unobstructed view of the Pacific Ocean, with Catalina anchored right in the center of it. And we lived there for a number of years until Ann told me one day that I don't want to live and die in LA County, and I'm moving up north, and you're welcome to join me. And you have to understand that the person you married, which was on June 18, 1966, is not the same person who a couple decades later got to be this powerful, forceful woman who knew her own mind. Because when I married her, she was intimidated of calling the information operator for a telephone number in the days you had dial-up telephones. So I decided I would be moving to Berkeley and got permission from my office to transfer. And I realized that things aren't really what's important in life. As people and relationships. And that turned out to be a really great move. And then we lived there for a number of years, about 10 years or so. And then finally when we retired, we were looking for this environment. And we were looking to build. And we got lost going down Cove Road and ended up at the end of the cul-de-sac and saw a for sale sign in a house that we ended up buying. And I was very proud of Ann. I'm not so sure how much she knew that, even though I tell her that. But that dog that she rescued in front of our neighbor's house was only the beginning of her relationship with animals. And she got her bachelor's degree. She went back and got her teaching degree. I think a master's in education, and was an English teacher for a few years, and was very innovative in her teaching techniques. And she would use scores of music to teach poetry. She would have the better students tutor the younger students and the troubled students. And when she wanted to transfer to high school, her principal wouldn't let her because he didn't want to lose her. So she quit, went back to school, and became a clinical psychologist. And then she integrated pets in her therapy. I thought, that has to be the craziest thing I ever heard, using animals for therapy. And this was a time when child abuse was first gaining national attention. And there was this McMartin school in Redondo Beach where the son, Raymond Bucky, and his mother were abusing all these kids in this preschool. And Ann had some of those kids, and no one quite knew how to deal with child abuse as far as from a therapeutic standpoint. And she used the dog. She used Murphy. And when she explained how she used it, it made perfect sense. She, first of all, taught the dog. She would ask a kid a question, and she would say, "Well, let me digress. If the kid is complaining about, gee, I want a later bedtime," she'd say, "Let's ask Murphy the dog." And she'd say, if he taps his hand, it's yes, this hand is no. And she would, by where she placed the hand, she would control which hand the dog would touch.
Wow.
But the
Brilliant.
But these little kids never caught it.
Brilliant.
And other times she'd have the dog whisper in her ear. And other times she would attribute all the kids' bad habits to the dog and say, "Gee, Murphy just will not listen to me. What do you think I should do?" And over time she would bring that back a full 360 and apply it to the kid in a therapeutic way. And she was just always being very innovative. And I saw firsthand after we moved here and she worked in the clinic. And I went to work with her one day and the kids saw us in the parking lot with our dog. And they ran up real enthusiastic saying, hi Murphy, hi Dr. Ann. And I could see the love they have for that pet.
Wow.
And she was a very independent person, very strong-willed person. She was really the love of my life.
It's beautiful.
And it'll be nice to know when I look out the window, and we'll be there.
Din. My move was kind of a long, drawn-out process because I was actually between Norway and my home here, down the road from Mike and Ann. And Mike welcomed me out by the mailbox one day, and he was the tour guide for Bellingham. And I met Ann, of course, at the same time, and both of them have just been real good friends ever since. So it's really an honor and a pleasure to be able to join you for this event today, Mike. Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet.
And yes, thanks, Mike. I was surprised and honored to be asked. I'm the neighborhood gardener, apparently, and started working with Mike and Ann, almost 10 years ago, I think. And what I loved about Ann is you never had to guess what she was thinking. And she was like, or feel, if she was frustrated with me or, and at first I have to say that I found her really abrupt, and I did not know if we would be able to work together because she was so, Ann knew what she wanted, but as the years went by, me and Mike kind of had a joke between us because she would have us move plants or plant something and we would plant it, and then she'd want it moved an inch, so we'd dig it back up and we move it, so it was kind of a fun, joke between us, that if Ann got involved with the gardening, that it was going to be a process. But, and I shared her love of the dogs and the animals, and sad that Barney couldn't make the cut, but I did know Bitsy too, and I'm really glad that I got to know Ann.
Oh. Anyone else want to go? Do you see anything? You good?
I'm at a loss because I thank you for asking me to do this, Mike. It's my honor.
Ann and Mike have always been so good to me. I first came up here to this house 19 years ago, and they welcomed me as family right away. We laughed so much. Ann had a fantastic sense of humor, and we talk about Ann quite often, actually, in our house in Pasadena. And one thing we do, Ann, I remember when that time we would have these conversations and we'd be watching TV, and then we'd talk and the TV would be going on, but then Ann would pick up the remote and pause the TV so we could have the conversation, and then she would start the TV again. And now we do that in our home in Pasadena, and we go, hang on, we got to do an Auntie Ann. And just go, okay. And regularly, all the time, actually. Yeah. And I remember, I think it was maybe the first or second visit, Anne was kind enough to take Jessica shopping so Mike and I could go to the pub. I've always respected her and loved her since that moment.
Oh, sweet.
Yes. And we'll always miss her and we'll always remember her. And I remember her as just a wonderful, kind, welcoming woman.
Yeah.
And very, very glad to have known her for the years that I did.
So, Auntie Anne said something to me, the most important advice I've ever gotten from anybody, because I grew up with not seeing healthy relationships. So on both sides, my mom's 3 husbands and my dad's 3 wives, whatever. But every summer I would see Ann and Mike, and they were always so happy and so joyful. And I didn't grow up with that. And so I didn't really, Owen's my very first boyfriend. I was very scared to get in a relationship because I just didn't think that they worked. And I asked Ann, one time we were in San Francisco, in Berkeley, we were baking something, and Auntie Ann and Uncle Mike were chasing each other around with the batter, with the ice, with the frosting or whatever. And I was like, this is crazy. You guys are old people, you know? Like, I didn't know you could do that when you're old. And I asked Auntie Ann later, like, what is the secret to having a healthy, happy relationship? And she said to me that it should make your life easier, not harder. And that has always stuck with me, that it makes your life easier, not harder. And I really thank both Ann and Mike for just having this amazing, beautiful relationship and being there for me all these years. And I think that is probably why I waited so long for Owen, and he makes my life easier, not harder. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Couldn't find anybody within the
I really
country had to
tried.
go
I tried.
out outside our borders. So.
I know, right?
Oh, wow. That's so cool. That's beautiful. It's just
The tradition for a mariner's burial at sea is to deposit the ashes in the water and circle the ashes 3 times counterclockwise to celebrate memories and the past. And once the 3rd circle is complete, we stop, reverse, and move forward clockwise 3 times because of the future that we have in front of us. Remembering the past first.
Of all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me, and all I have done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night, and joy be with you all.
Of all the comrades that e'er I had, they are sorry for my going away. And to all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they'd wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I will gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be with you all. Good night, and joy